All right, AP Calc, the champs are here. Let's do this. Lesson 22. All right, this is page 3. Let's take a look at this function. And before we even start, got to have that emotional support. I believe in you. Who else believes in you? Mr. Giraffe over here, he also believes in you. Can't forget the giraffe without Chris Mary's favorite lion over here, or Adamari's favorite little Mr. Bobo over here. So let's do this. Okay, so we have this function. Let's just zoom in a little bit. It says, given h of x is equal to 3 sine x, find the equation of the tangent line of f at the point where x is equal to 7 pi over 4. And this seems like a lot, but we're just going to break everything down step by step. So the first thing is we need to be able to draw a visual of what's happening here. So what does this graph look like? 3 sine x. The idea is it'll just look like middle up, middle, down, middle. And this should be the graph like this. Yeah. Okay, this is the graph of 3 sine x. And what the question is saying is, find the equation of the tangent line at the point 7 pi over 4. So notice that where is 7 pi over 4 on this graph? It is right over here. If we have at x equals 7 pi over 4, what this question is saying is when the x value is 7 pi over 4, this is our y value, right? It's saying at this point there is a line tangent to this sine curve. It's saying what is the equation of this line, okay? And notice to find the equation of this line, we need the point and we need the slope, okay? And it looks more difficult than it really is, but it's very simply, you just need these two things. So the first thing we're going to do is get the slope, right? And how do you get the slope of this line? Notice that if we have the function, let's start here. If we have the function h of x, and the function is 3 sine x, then we want to find the derivative which calculates the slope at any given point. So this is h prime of x is equal to, what's the derivative of 3 sine x? It's 3 cosine x times the derivative of x, right? But what's the derivative of x? It's just 1. So just h prime of x is equal to 3 cosine x, okay? So part 1, we find the derivative. Part 2, plug in x equals 7 pi over 4 into h prime of x, right? So we want to know what the slope is at this point. So we're going to plug in that x value. So let's plug it in. So if we know that h of x is equal to, h prime of x is equal to 3 cosine of x, right? It's 3 times the cosine of x. So then what is h prime of 7 pi over 4? Okay, so we need to be able to calculate 7 pi over 4. And what is this? It'll be 3 times cosine of 7 pi over 4. Now, just doing this alone is its own problem. So you have to take your time and calculate what is 7 pi over 4. Okay, pause the video, right? And if you feel shaky on how to solve it, okay, well, what is cosine of 7 pi over 4? So notice that 7 times pi over 4 is the same as 7 times 180 degrees divided by 4, which is equal to, what is this, 1260 over 4, which is 315. So you're really just finding cosine of 315 degrees. And how do you find cosine of 315 degrees? Well, okay, you gotta, do this whole shebang, make your circle, find your reference angle, and you got to take your time. And notice that cosine is positive over here. This should just be square root of 2 over 2. Okay, that is cosine of 7 pi over 4. It's square root of 2 over 2. So then this just becomes 3 times square root of 2 over 2, which just is 3 radical 2 over 2. Okay, now it looks weird, but what does this 3 radical 2 over 2, what does this represent, right? Okay, take your time and try and look back at the picture that we have over here, right? What does this 3 radical 2 over 2 represent with respect to this line? That's the slope. The slope of this line is 3 radical 2 over 2 because we took the original function, we found the derivative, and we plugged in the x value for the derivative of that function, and the derivative calculates the slope, okay? So the slope of this line is 3 radical 2 over 2. Okay, so we found the slope. Now we need to find the point. Okay, well, how do you find this point? You know that this point, what is the x value of this point over here? It's 7 pi over 4, right? Now, what's the y value? If I wanted to find the y value, I just plug in the x value into the original function. So now let's just simply here, step 3, plug in x equals 7 pi over 4 into h of x, right? Because you want to find the y value. So, okay, so what is h of x? H of x is equal to 3 sine of x, 3 times sine of x. So what is h of 7 pi over 4? So that's equal to 3 times sine of 7 pi over 4, okay? And take your time, pause the video. This should take your time, figure this out on your own, right? You should get 3 times sine of, this should be negative radical 2 over 2 because sine is negative in the 4th quadrant. So then this becomes negative 3 radical 2 over 2, okay? And notice, shouldn't that represent this represents the y value, and shouldn't this number be negative anyway because it's, it's below the x-axis? So this y value over here is negative 3 radical 2 over 2. So here, this is our point at 7 pi over 4, negative 3 radical 2 over 2, okay? So don't freak out, right? Like, just trust yourself. We found the slope, we have the point, and now we just have to label everything to make it look nice and pretty. Our m and our x sub 1 and our y sub 1, right? Here our m value is 3 radical 2 over 2. What's our x sub 1? It's 7 pi over 4 and negative 3 radical 2 over 2. And now we just need the point slope formula. And what is the point slope formula? It is y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. Okay? And we just substitute everything in. So this is y minus a minus, right? Minus for the original equation, and that's a negative. So this becomes positive 3 radical 2 over 2 equals 3 radical 2 over 2 times x minus 7 pi over 4. Bam. And this is it. And you know what? We're just going to leave it for now. All right? Technically, what should we do? We should get y by itself. But for now, let's just get into the idea of just getting into this. To get y by itself, it's a little extra for now. So, right? Not too bad. What I want you to do is, let's look at the next question, and I want you to try and do it by yourself. So let's take a look at question number 4. Let me get a new piece of paper. Okay, so question number 4. And there's a small little mistake. It says 2 pi over 9, but that is not possible. So it should be, let's try pi over 2. That should be okay. Okay, so pi over 2. So let's take a look. We have this graph, 3 cotangent 3x. Now, what does this graph look like? It's a little interesting what this graph looks like. For now, let's just accept what I'm going to draw, that this is the graph. But the graph of this should look something like, oh boy, I haven't drawn this in a while. What does it look like? Oh boy. Okay, yeah, it should look like this. You do this, 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 and there's an asymptote at every pi over 3 like this. And you're probably thinking, Mister, you just went from 0 to 100, but let's get the general idea. This is what the graph looks like, okay? Just accept it for what it is. But the idea of the question doesn't change because it's saying, you have this graph, and it's saying, what is the tangent line at this point? And it's at the point pi over 2. So notice that if I have this graph, the tangent line looks something like this, right? That's the tangent line. So what we want to do is we want to find the equation. Let me zoom in a little bit. We want to find the equation of this tangent line at pi over 2 for the graph of 3 cotangent 3x, okay? That's the general idea. So now, same idea. So here, what is the derivative? Let's do the first part. If t of x is equal to 3 cotangent 3x, right? What is the slope of this line over here? What is the slope of this line? We need to find the derivative and plug in pi over 2. So you need to take your time. What is the derivative of 3 cotangent 3x? You should pause the video, and this should take you some time to figure out what this is, okay? To find this, let's just maybe break it down a little bit. Let's do inside outside. This is your actually, let me color code it a little bit better. This is your outside, and this, okay, I'm messing it up, I'm sorry. Let this be your outside, and then this is your inside, okay? So what is the derivative of the outside? What is the derivative of 3 cotangent, right? So t prime of x is equal to, oh boy, what's the derivative of cotangent? Is it 3 cosecant, negative 3 cosecant squared 3x times the derivative of 3x, okay? And then, because that you have to take the derivative of the blue and then take the derivative of the inside, so now t prime of x equals, this is 3, right? So this becomes negative 9 cosecant squared 3x, okay? That's part 1, just finding the derivative. Now to find the slope, we're going to take t prime of x, right? Now we have to plug in pi over 2 into the derivative of this. So what is the derivative of, oh crap, this is really difficult actually. This is going to be negative 9 cosecant, and notice you could put the square on the outside, 3 times pi over 2. And then what is cosecant of 3 pi over 2? So cosecant of 3 pi over 2, we haven't really done this in class, but basically cosecant of 3 pi over 2 is the same as 1 over sine 3 pi over 2. And what is sine of 3 pi over 2? Notice that if I have my circle over here, 3 pi over 2 is over here. Like this is 0, this is pi over 2, this is pi, this is 3 pi over 2. And what is this value? This is 0, negative 1. And remember, sine is the y, so this is really just 1 over negative 1. So then this becomes, from here on the inside, it just becomes negative 9 times negative 1 squared. So this really just becomes negative 9 times 1, which is negative 9. Holy moly, that was not easy. I did not expect this to be that difficult. But that's the general idea. Like, what does this negative 9 represent? It represents this slope. And look, you see how the tangent line looks like this? Doesn't this have a negative slope? Right? So the slope of this is negative 9. I will try not to give you a difficult problem, something as difficult next time. Okay? Now, what do we need to do? We need to plug in pi over 2 into the original. So here, let x equal pi over 2, now we need to find the y value, right? Because actually, what is the y value right here? What is the y value? It's 0. But let's say you don't know. Let's just see. It should be 0. But let's see. So let's see. So t of x is equal to 3 cotangent 3x. So t of pi over 2 is equal to 3 times cotangent 3 pi over 2. Okay? Okay, now what is cotangent 3 pi over 2? Cotangent of 3 pi over 2 is the same as sine, oh, I'm sorry, no. Pause the video. What cotangent theta, what does that equal? It equals cosine theta over sine theta. So what is cotangent of 3 pi over 2? That's equal to cosine of 3 pi over 2 over sine of 3 pi over 2. But that's just equal to 0 over negative 1, and that's 0. So then this becomes 3 times 0, and that's 0. And if you're confused, because we did sine of 3 pi over 2, that's negative 1. But why is cosine of 3 pi over 2 0? Because over here, look how the cosine is the x value. And what's the x value at 3 pi over 2? It's 0. So this is just 0 over negative 1, and that's 0. So notice that this is our x value, which is this, and here our y value is 0. And now we have everything. So here for part 4, our m is equal to negative 9, our x sub 1, y sub 1, this is pi over 2, comma 0. And now we just need to use the point slope formula, y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. And now this becomes y minus 0 equals negative 9 times x minus pi over 2. So this is, now to put this into this, it's just y equals negative 9x plus 9 pi over 2. Okay. Whew! Damn. Not easy. That's why that was really, really not easy. Okay. What I'd like you to do is take it in and just understand how difficult the course is, right? This is calculus, all right? What I want you to try and do is try and do the next question. Where's that question? Let's see. Yeah, question 5. Try and do this one on your own for class, and let's see if you guys can do it. I'll see you in class tomorrow.